Okay. Hey, good afternoon. It's Ben out at Gooseneck Implement in Lemon, South Dakota with Chris Lorkey, our service manager, and we're talking a little bit of some details on the W235 Windrower. And we're going to talk a little bit about setting the proper float pressure on the display. You hit your button right here on the hydro handle, and that'll get you to your float pressure. And about 1,200 pounds of float is a good place to start. You should notice the left being a little higher than the right because the having the pump and all the assembly on the left side of the header, you need a little bit more float, but you can adjust that up and down simply by pushing the button up or down or tapping on the screen. And you'll notice if you get too much float pressure, the head's going to come off the ground. Proper float pressure when you go out to the front of the head, you should be able to lift the head with about 100 pounds of force. Now, of course, that all depends on if you're running in rocky conditions. You might want a little bit more float on it than if you are running in good, heavy, solid alfalfas and millet, sorghum type crops. The other thing we want to talk about is the differences. You want to do some different settings for cutting in grass versus cutting in your millet, sorghum, alfalfa heavy crops. The knock on the rotary heads has always been they won't cut grass, and I think as salesmen we've done a poor job of training guys how to set a header up to cut grass. You want to have a high lift blade on your head so that you get the grass cleared off of the cutter bar and shoved into the conditioner as quickly as possible. The next thing you want to do is set your skid shoes on the back of the head as high as possible to get, and then tilt your header down to get a little more header angle, and you'll see that on the cutter bar head there, the gauge from 0 to 8. You're going to want to probably be more around this, somewhere in this 4 to 6 to 8 range. To be a good starting spot's probably around 5, where when you're cutting sorghum and millet, alfalfa, you're going to be pretty level. The next thing you want to do, the W235's, the great advantage is this constant header speed. When I'm cutting in heavy crops, I'm going to rev the engine all the way up, and I'm going to crank the header speed all the way up, and because I need as much as I can get to cut heavy crop. When I'm cutting in thinner grasses, I'm going to run the engine at mid-idle, and I'm also going to crank this header speed down all the way down to about 1,800 RPMs is a good starting spot. And this is just something that you'll learn more depending on what type of grasses you're cutting and what type of product you're going through. You just kind of have to play with those settings as you're cutting with the customer, or if you're out on a demo and you can go out and maybe cut the first round, you kind of just be willing to play with that header speed and change it up and down and watch your cut, look in your mirrors, maybe have another guy out with you and be on the phone kind of telling you what's going on behind that machine and what you need to adjust. The next thing we should go talk about, we'll go down and look at the header just a little bit.